Great, thank you so much. Good morning and welcome to the Joint Committee or Subcommittee on General Government and Ways and Means. I am ready to call this meeting to order, and may the Secretary please call the roll.
Senator Brooks.
Here.
Senator Dennis. Senator Gogachia.
Here.
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
And Chair Peters.
Here, thank you. And would you mark Senator Dennis present when he pops in?
Of course.
Thank you. A couple of housekeeping items. We've been doing this for a little bit, but just want to make sure that folks know we will be doing public comment period at the end of the budget hearings. They're asking that the public comment be limited to 2 minutes. However, written testimony may be provided to the committee for review by the members. Members of the public can find instructions on how to participate on the posted agenda or on Nellis. We do ask in this digital format, as well as in our general rooms, that folks who are presenting make clearly state their name as they speak so that our committee secretary can reflect that in the record. It makes it much easier on them. And members, as you know, Zoom chat directs you to broadcast. So if you have anything you'd like to send to me, please use Skype or other means. I think I have a Teams chat set up as well if you'd like to post questions there. Otherwise, I will keep an eye out for hands raised and waving me down for questions. On today's agenda, the subcommittee is hearing budgets from the Department of Administration. I'm going to ask that the representatives presenting from the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges and National Judicial College, please go ahead and prepare to proceed with the presentation. I do want to, however, let you know that we will be stopping at the end of each budget for questions so that we can keep our questions consistent with the budgets. So go ahead if you are ready and proceed with the first budget presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning. My name is Joey Orduña Hastings. I'm the CEO of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. Today, I am joined by our Board of Director, Judge Egan Walker, and our Finance Director, Trudy DeLong. And I'll be quick. I believe you all have a copy of this PowerPoint, but I would like to first start by thanking you for having us and considering our budget and for all that you're doing for Nevadans during this pandemic. We really appreciate all your extra efforts. Next slide, please. As you saw, our hashtag is every court, every child. And we mean that in that we work with all courts and participants in our court system and allied agencies. So you can see our mission and our vision. We lead through our values of compassion, leadership, education, and community. I like to describe the work of the National Council as a spectrum of services in that we offer not only judicial education, legal education for court professionals, but also we provide research, policy, and hands-on consultation. It may take the form of court observation, case file review, surveys and evaluations. Both our mission and vision are very ambitious and have been around for almost 84 years now in May. Next slide. The NCJFCJ is the oldest and one of the largest judicial memberships in the country. And not only do we do work domestically, but we also do work internationally. We serve about 30,000 professionals across the country. During 2020, as many nonprofits had to, we had to adapt to a virtual setting. And Despite the pandemic, we were still able to train almost 10,000 judges and court professionals and fulfill approximately 900 requests for technical assistance. And for those of you that may not know, technical assistance in the term of art that we use might be publications, might be research, might be strategic planning, and other forms of, again, tailored services to the court needs. We are a leader in continuing education. We offer research. We have an independent research arm that is in Pittsburgh. Our main office is here in Reno, Nevada, and we are an affiliate of the University of Nevada, Reno. And our website is listed there as well. Most of all of our offerings are offered free to all members of the public and judges due to the grants that we have secured. We're able to provide most of our work through those grants for free for entities that need to access our education. Next slide. This is just a general overview of all the different types of work the council offers and projects. So we do everything from all aspects of juvenile and family law, including domestic violence and domestic relations. We also do a lot of work related to community. So one of the tenets of the NCJFCJ's work is that we believe judges are valued community members and conveners. And so we encourage our judges through our trainings and membership to get into the communities, work with local schools, work with housing authorities, other branches of government to achieve much of the work that we're trying to do on behalf of children and families and to really change the trajectory of the lives of children and families and survivors of violence. So that is a general overview. Again, we have many publications related to these topics that are downloadable from our website. Next slide, please. So we have had decades of partnership and membership in the state of Nevada. We are 84 years, as I said, in May. We are also pleased to participate with our colleagues at the Judicial College and the University of Nevada Reno Judicial Studies program that actually offers a PhD program for judges at the University of Nevada, Reno. We have about 72 employees, and we are really proud that despite losing significant money during 2020, we were able to keep all of our employees employed, and the council continued to do the work on behalf of children, families, and survivors. We do a lot of work here in Nevada, both in the urban areas and rural areas, and support a lot of Nevada-led efforts. For example, I listed a couple there for you. Many people think that the National Council just serves judges. We actually are a multidisciplinary organization. At our core, we are a judicial membership organization, but we support all aspects of the system. So we train teachers, police officers, counselors, attorneys, and most recently, I'll give you an example of an allied agency. We did a human trafficking training for RIMSA here in Washoe County to help their team better understand and identify aspects of human trafficking that may not be very visible on its face and really ask questions and inquire further to help young women and boys that may be being trafficked. And so that would be an example of an allied agency that we would help in the system in the juvenile and family court arena. We have almost 100 members here in Nevada and several board of directors from Las Vegas and Reno. The council also offers 2 national conferences a year, and we're very pleased to bring those home to Nevada. We did one in Southern Nevada in 2019, our National Juvenile Justice Conference, and we had all intentions to provide our July 2020 conference here in Reno, Nevada. However, the pandemic had another goal in mind, so we had to go virtual for that conference, but we were able to secure to bring back our 85th annual conference here in Reno at the Nugget in 2022. So we are still committed to bringing much of our work home. We also rely on a number of Nevada judicial faculty. We, last year, again virtually, offered the first of its kind Juvenile Justice Institute for Nevadans by Nevadans. And we used a lot of judicial experts, and that training is completely available for free online for all Nevadans, probation officers, judges, so on and so forth. And that was a very successful venture. We're also pleased to let you know that with the funding that the Nevada Legislature and the governor supports the NCJFCJ with, we were able to secure a record number of grants this year and offer and continue to reinvest in the Nevada economy to the tune of about $12 million through our grants and employment, and bringing those judges and others to Reno when we are able to be in person to be trained. So the council today is hoping and respectfully requesting to be restored back to its budget of $125,000 per year of the biennium for a total of $250,000. And that would be our request. Given the pandemic and the budget issues that Nevada is facing, we are not requesting any more funds at this time, just to be restored back to the original funding. And so with that, I'd like to turn this over to Judge Egan Walker to provide some comments. Next slide, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Egan Walker. I have the privilege of serving in Department 7 of the 2nd Judicial District Court. I am one of your Nevada judges. I don't in any way pretend to speak for judges in Nevada, but I ask you to hear the collective voices of judges in Nevada for the why this issue matters. Both the request by the National Council and the request by the National Judicial College have real boots on the ground implications for all of you and for me. And here's how. I'll give you an example from a courtroom in which I work, and it happens in courtrooms in Nevada every day across the state. Not too long ago, I was faced with a challenging case involving the resentencing of a gentleman who had committed 3 murders. The second of those 3 murders had occurred here in Nevada. He was suspected of at least 2, if not 3 other murders in other jurisdictions. I was conducting a resentencing of that gentleman. Consistent with their duty, the jury returned a verdict of death in his case. And ladies and gentlemen, in the way of the process of sentencing and imposition of sentence in Nevada, I signed his death warrant. So it was my signature that went on an order ordering the director of the Nevada Department of Corrections to put him to death. That seminal event is important for this reason. The man whose death I ordered is a former foster child and a person who was involved in the child delinquency system. The same week that I signed that man's death warrant, I dealt in court with the following facts. I was presented with a 15-year-old young girl who was being sexually trafficked out of Nevada, out of our jurisdiction, and had been recovered from her traffickers for the 4th time in just 2 years. So she had been trafficked to San Francisco, trafficked to Miami, trafficked within and around Nevada. And we had recovered her for the 4th time. And as I was sitting in court and experienced probation officers, experienced social workers, experienced lawyers, and this young girl all looked at me, they said, "Judge, we need a solution for this girl. Judge, you have to fix this. Judge, you need to make a decision that will save her life." And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you I'm educated as a nurse. My undergraduate degree is a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I went to law school. I've received hundreds of hours of training in general judicial concepts. But the only place I can prevent that girl from being on the path of the man whose death warrant I signed is the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. I'm not trained in law school to deal with the trauma of children. I'm not trained in law school to understand best practices for dealing with delinquent and dependent children. I'm not trained in law school for how to conduct a death penalty hearing. The only place I get that specialized training, and the only place I can in any way hope to answer the question of what does that child needs, is the training I've received at the National Council of Juvenile Family Court Judges and the National Judicial College. And so I offer a request, ladies and gentlemen, as a boots on the ground judge whose privilege, pleasure, and job is to serve all of you and the citizens of the state. Please help educate we judges. The only place we can get the specialized training we need is the council and the Judicial College, and it's a great privilege to have that epicenter in this community. I thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge Walker. Sorry.
That's okay. If you have additional statements, please go ahead.
Okay, we do have one more slide, Chair Peters. And then I'm happy to turn it over to Bennett Saldana at the Judicial College. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do think we have some questions related to your request for E225, which is the enhancement for the court or the court judges program. And those questions will be coming from Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is that first, thank you for the presentation and giving us a better understanding of what it is actually that the National Council on Juvenile and Family Court Judges does. So we appreciate that. Thank you. My question is, if the recommended funding is received, how much federal and grant revenue does the council anticipate it will generate as a result of the restoration to the general fund appropriation?
So I will take a stab at answering that, Assemblywoman, and then I will ask my finance director to also make comment. So the council in the last 4 years has achieved milestones in grant awards. This year, we're at $15.6 million going into 2021. That is the highest in the history of the National Council. And it is with these dollars that that Nevada supports us with that we're able to leverage and spend time learning more, writing proposals, meeting with federal funders to achieve that, and the economic impact that we bring back to Nevada. And that's a report done by the University of Nevada, Reno Small Business Department, is to the tune of $12 million. So we bring those dollars back into Nevada through employment, through grants, through bringing students, judge students and others to the Nevada community and through our conferences. And so we've been able to maximize these dollars quite extensively. I hope that answers the question. And if not, our finance director is here to also provide additional comment.
Well, I'm happy to hear from them if they have anything additionally to add.
I would just offer that it should be understood that grant dollars cannot be used to submit grant proposals. That's strictly against the grant guidelines. So we rely on outside funding, if you will, so we can actually write the proposals, employ the people to do that. I would also say that our trajectory of grants that we've been awarded has increased since we've had the funding from the state of Nevada. It was reduced for a few years back in budget days, but with that increased funding, we have seen an upward trajectory every year of the amount of grants that we have been awarded. So every cent helps. I just can't emphasize that enough. But we go and also our, I guess you call it your gain rate, the percentage of proposals that we apply for that we are actually awarded, that has increased in the last 5 years as well. So we used to get about a third of the grants that we applied for. Now we're looking at something around 60%, which is a good yes. Because we can put the effort into writing really good proposals and making the connections we need to secure those funds.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up, Chair?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Could you then describe the impact that it would have on the council if the recommended restoration funded wasn't approved?
Yes, Joey Orduña Hastings for the record, Assemblywoman. It would impact us greatly. As Ms. Trudy DeLong noted, those funds are used to allow us to write grants. If we do not have the funds to write the grants, that hampers our ability to broaden the scope of work that we can provide and the services we can provide to the public. Again, the beauty of having the grants is the ability to provide these services at a larger scale for free so that at any area of Nevada and the country can access the resources and not have to worry about finding their own money to pay for these services. And so that it would decrease our ability to provide services on a broad scale.
Madam Assemblywoman, can I jump in?
Yes, please.
This is Egan Walker for the record. So that 15-year-old girl is in a specialized program called Project One. Project One was stood up by the National Council. These unrestricted funds allow me to make a technical request to the council to tell me what is the evidence you can show me for the decisions I make in this child's life that will have good outcomes for her. And in fact, that happened with this child. I was able to get real-time research through the council to confirm decisions I was making to try and improve her trajectory.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And I want to also echo Assemblywoman Miller's statements about thank you for presenting your request and the overview of what your program does. I think it's really important for the state, and it is invaluable. The amount of grant dollars you guys are able to bring in with the funding you've received is really fantastic and impressive. I have another question. Oh, I'm sorry, for the record, and the Secretary, I just want to point out that Senator Dennis, I believe, has joined us. Yes, there he is. I have another question from Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you, Chair Peters. I was going over some of the history on past appropriations, and I was wondering if you could explain or give a little bit of a background about the decrease in the funding from the 2009-2011 biennium, which had you guys down from like originally 250,000 to almost 87,000, and then we're back up to the 250,000 level. So could you explain a little bit about what happened historically with the decrease in funds?
Yes, happy to field that question, Assemblywoman. So I've been the CEO of the National Council for almost 5 years in July. So that predates me. My understanding of the history, it also predates my finance director, Trudy DeLong. We're both in this newer number of years. Our understanding is those decreases came as a result of the recession and a decrease in the ability for the Nevada Legislature to provide those funds. So it was not due to services or performance, but rather an ability to allocate those dollars and not take away from other priority areas. That is my understanding. And then in the last 5 years, we've been able to increase that, which is where we are today. The restoration to the 125,000 per year of the biennium is actually gets us back to that pre-2009 funding. So we're very proud of that achievement in the last 5 years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, for that clarifying question and for the response. Are there any other questions from the committee on this particular piece of the budget? I don't see any. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you so much for your presentation. And let's move on to the National Judicial College presentation. I am going to request, I saw the presentation online. Thank you so much. It is 40 slides long, and I'm going to ask that we limit the presentation maybe to 20 minutes if we can. I think we can review some of the background information that's in this presentation ourselves. So if you can stick to the kind of broader overview and request on the budget.
Thank you, Chairwoman Peters. Actually, I was just going to provide a couple of minutes remarks this morning. I know you have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation as well as our narrative budget request. So good morning again, Chair Peters, Chair Brooks, and Vice Chair Haragui and members. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of the National Judicial College in support of the State of Nevada Budget Item 101-1302 funding for the National Judicial College. Again, I'm Dennis Aldana, President and CEO of the National Judicial College. I'm pleased to join you remotely, as I said, to say a few words in support of the state funding for the National Judicial College. The first words I'm going to tell you is thank you. Thank you for the state's generous support of the college, which has extended over many decades. Since 1964, the National Judicial College has been a crown jewel on the campus of the University of Nevada, Reno, and the gold standard in judicial education. The categories of judges we serve decide more than 95% of the cases in this country. Each year, we educate judges from all states and several foreign countries, but Nevada is our home. We educate more judges from Nevada than from any other state. Almost 2,400 Nevada judges have studied with us since 2010. And last month, in response from newly elected judges in Clark County, we added an extra session of our Taking the Bench course and enrolled 16 Nevada judges. Many received scholarship assistance. Nevadans continue to be well represented on our governing board. Former Governor, Senator Richard Bryan and NV Energy President Doug Cannon recently rotated off our board of trustees. Attorney General Aaron Ford and Nevada NV Energy Vice President General Counsel Brandon Barkoff have been nominated to replace them and are awaiting formal approval from members of our corporation at their next meeting. According to an assessment conducted in 2020 by the Center for Regional Studies at UNR's College of Business, the NJC provides $8.7 million in economic impact annually to Nevada and contributes $3.3 million each year to the state's labor income alone. We are seeking support for the current budget requests, a renewal of your most recent pandemic reduced appropriation to us of $455,000. You can easily do the math on the return on investment, and our written materials explain how we would use the money. I doubt any nonprofit will be coming for you this year to boast of its prosperous 2020. In our case, we were reminded of that famous opening line in A Tales of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. We typically have between 8,000 and 10,000 enrollments a year. Last year, thanks largely to the popularity of two emergency response webinar series we created, one on judging during a pandemic, the other on racial justice, we cleared more than 23,000 enrollments. That was more than double our record for a year. That was the best of times. The worst of times is not hard to guess. Enrollment in our in-person courses, our major revenue source, fell from nearly 6,800 in 2019 to less than 1,000 in 2020. One of our founders, the American Bar Association, which is dealing with its own serious financial issues, reduced its annual appropriation to us from $50,000 a year to zero. Our total revenue fell from $6 million in 2019 to $4.3 million in 2020. That's a decrease of almost $1.7 million, $1.694 and $199 to be exact. Despite loans from the Paycheck Protection Program, we had to make difficult decisions to reduce our payroll expenses through staff reductions. Like all of you, we look forward to better times. We plan to resume in-person classes beginning in August. Many of those will be in Reno, and I know our local hotels and restaurants are eager to welcome back hundreds of judges from our state. Your support helped bring the National Judicial College to Nevada, and it has sustained our internationally recognized organization ever since. Thank you for the pride and confidence you have shown in us. We are equally proud to call Nevada home. And I'm here to answer any questions with my executive team if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that brief presentation and those comments. We are all really feeling the hurt from this last year and appreciate where you're coming from. We do have a couple of questions related to the Dividing the Waters program, if that is appropriate right now.
Chair Peters.
Great. I'm going to start this with my first question, which has to do with who utilizes the program. Can you tell us how many judges and in what jurisdictions participate in the Dividing the Waters program annually? And in addition to Nevada judges, what other states are judges participating from?
Yes, Chair Peters. The Dividing the Waters program is mainly for Western adjudicators who adjudicated water law issues. And in the last biennium, we had a total of 11 Nevada judges who participated in our programmings as detailed in our follow-up responses. In terms of breakdown in terms of district within Nevada, we don't have that information, but we'll be happy to submit that as a follow-up.
Thank you. I would be curious. I know that our districts generally manage water issues in their courts, but we have seen a couple go through the Supreme Court this year, and I'm just curious how far your program reaches within the judicial system. I have another question from Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you, Chair Peters. I also had a question regarding the Divided Waters program. How would it be impacted if the recommended restorations of funding was not approved?
If it was not approved, we would be limiting, we probably have limited programs in terms of focusing on water law. I know that water law is becoming a more important issue as Nevada continues to, Nevada courts deal with these issues, and we want to expand that program. So the impact would be that we would have limited programming. Assembly Gorlow.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Aldana. And absolutely, water issues are the up and coming contentious issue in the state if they haven't already been contentious. I don't see any other questions from Assembly members. Oh, Senator Gokachia, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and more of a comment than a question. And clearly, I believe we need to reinstate this funding. But the bottom line, I'm just concerned that, and I know where there's some talk. Chief Justice Hardesty is also looking at, maybe another way we can actually bring a little more expertise into the courts as it pertains to water law. And I'm definitely very interested in see how that moves forward. And I would hope that you would be able to incorporate at least some of that training with those individuals as well.
Yes, good morning, Senator Gokachia. I am actually, in fact, meeting with Chief Justice Hardesty in the next couple of weeks to discuss and provide any support that he needs in terms of expanded programming or providing support in exploring creation of water courts in Nevada.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. And that was Mr. Aldana for the record. Just want to remind folks as you're presenting, please remember to state your name for the record. It just makes it so much easier on the other side as we get minutes. Thank you so much for your presentation. Again, I don't see anybody else raising their hand for questions. So I think that's what we had for those pieces. And we can move on. Thank you again, Mr. Aldana.
Thank you, Chair Peters and members.
So I'd like to move on to budget account 1015. Not sure exactly who's here to present that, but it looks like Miss Morgando, maybe?
Yes, good morning, Chair Peters.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the members of the Joint Subcommittee as well. The Department of Administration Hearings and Appeals Division is grateful for the opportunity to present our fiscal years 21 through 23 governor recommended budget. I do have a short PowerPoint. I believe that you all have copies, and I will just highlight. I can share my screen one moment. All right, thank you. The Hearings and Appeals Division employs 46 full-time employees. 36 are located in our Las Vegas office, and 10 are located in Carson City. We have 3 types of officers that help us establish and create the division's priorities. We provide fair and independent resolution hearings and adjudications in a timely and efficient manner while providing due process to all of our injured workers, employers, insurers, and others that are subject to our jurisdiction. Our first level of hearing is before a hearing officer. These are informal hearings, and they're designed to assist the parties in resolving the issues. The majority of the cases are workers' compensation cases and also victims of crime program. The appeals officers are the final administrative hearing level for workers' compensation, Division of Industrial Relations, victims of crime program, state Medicaid, and purchasing division appeals. These proceedings are formal, they're recorded, testimony is given under oath, witnesses testify, and evidence is admitted into the record. This is a final decision that is subject to judicial review. The appeals officers are appointed by the governor to 2-year terms and are full-time state employees. The division also utilizes special appeals officers. They're also appointed by the governor for 2-year terms, but they are independent contractors. They hear what we call our non-workers' compensation agency cases pursuant to interlocal agreements. The agencies that we currently hear cases for are the Department of Employment, Training and Rehabilitation, the Division of Human Resources Management, Mortgage Lending Division, Department of Education, Department of Transportation, the State Board of Cosmetology, and the State Fire Marshal. The Las Vegas office has 9 appeals officers, 5 hearing officers, and 4 special appeals officers. The Carson City office has 2 appeals officers, 2 hearing officers, and 3 appeals officers. Our A225 enhancement is requested to fund the expansion and renovation of the Las Vegas office to increase available courtroom space for the appeals officers. What our proposal is to move the space and employees downstairs currently occupying the hearing office. There's a vacant space downstairs that is available, and then the space that's vacated by the hearing office will be renovated to provide for 3 new courtrooms, including an ADA accessible courtroom. The 9 current appeals officers and 4 special appeals officers in Las Vegas only have 6 dedicated courtrooms to operate in. 3 of the appeals officers and all of the special appeals officers must try to schedule their cases within the assigned 6 courtrooms. 2 of the appeals officers who do not have courtrooms will now have a dedicated courtroom. The senior appeals officer and the special appeals officers will share the remaining new courtroom. So we hear basically cases in 2 manners. The first is what we call statutorily mandated cases. Before the appeals officer, those are contested workers' compensation matters, the Victims of Crime Program or VOC, cases within the purchasing division, usually bid appeals, and the Division of Industrial Relations, which handles uninsured employer matters and fines and penalties. And this graph shows the progression of the increase in cases since fiscal year 12. Fiscal year 20 is a bit of an anomaly due to the pandemic because there were many individuals who were not employed during much of fiscal year 20. There were less new workplace injuries. So we had fewer claims and fewer appeals associated with those claims. And this chart details the non-workers compensation agency cases, and those are the ones heard by the interlocal agreements. We hear the Department of Employment, Training and Rehabilitation, Personnel, which is Human Resources, State Medicaid, the Mortgage Lending Division, and the rest are detailed there. We recently signed an interlocal agreement with the Board of Cosmetology, but we have not heard any cases from that agency as of yet. We were in talks prior to the pandemic with the Cannabis Compliance Board to be a secondary appeal mechanism, and we hope to resume talks with the Cannabis Compliance Board soon. And you can see from fiscal year 12 through fiscal year 21, the cases have been increasing, particularly for DHRM and the state Medicaid program. And this graph summarizes the average number of cases assigned in a fiscal year to a single appeals officer. We saw quite an increase from 2017 to 18 and also 19. And then, as I said before, 20 is a bit of an anomaly, but we do expect as people go back to work that those amounts will go up. Each appeals officer also carries an average open caseload in fiscal year 21 as of the end of January of 917 open cases. And these are the amounts that we are requesting as our budget enhancement over and above the base budget to fund the expansion and renovation of our location. It's $212,594 in operating expenses, $59,904 for equipment, $13,672 for information services, and then fiscal year 23 is $2,047 just in operating expenses. We also have an E710 equipment replacement request, and that is to fund replacement for the computer hardware and associated software pursuant to its recommended replacement schedule. And for fiscal year 22, the amount requested is $19,464. And for fiscal year 23, it is $16,824. The vast majority of the funding for the Hearings and Appeals Division is through the Fund for Workers' Compensation and Safety within the Department of Industrial Relations. The statute that sets forth that fund states that all monies and securities in the fund must be used to defray all costs and expenses of administering the program of workers' compensation, including the payment of all salaries and expenses for our division. And a question arose in developing this budget enhancement regarding the agencies that we hear cases for that are not workers' compensation cases. What we are proposing is to calculate a facility usage fee for all of the agencies that use our courtroom, except for those for workers' compensation matters. The fee we propose to calculate based on the final price per square foot of the square footage of the new courtroom that will be used by the special appeals officers, calculated to an hourly rate. And we currently bill in our interlocal agreements and scopes of work hourly charges for the senior appeals officer time, for staff time. So amendments to the agreements to the scope of work would be discussed with the affected agencies prior to implementation. And that concludes the division's presentation. Thank you for your time and consideration. Chair Peters, would you like me to stop sharing my screen at this point?
Yes, please. We have a couple of questions for you. Thank you so much for the presentation up to this point.
Thank you.
I believe I have a couple questions from Vice Chair Howdigi.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I saw on Ms. Morgan on one of the slides you showed the progression of cases from 2010 to current, but the biggest jump seems to be from 2016 to fiscal year 2019. So can you walk us through what's caused the increase in caseloads?
We believe it was attributed to coming out of the recession and more people going back to work. Because new claims are a function of new workplace injuries, if people aren't working, then obviously the injury rate decreases. Nevada injured workers do have lifetime reopening rights, so there's always cases that are in litigation.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay, and then are you guys currently have a backlog of cases, or are you current with your cases?
Michelle Morganda, for the record, thank you for the question. We are current in setting our cases. We have mandatory guidelines pursuant to statute for when we have to set them. We do have cases that people want to wait to have their hearing until we reopen to the public. And we currently conduct hearings by telephone. We conduct virtual hearings, and we're hoping by the middle of March to have a plan in place to gradually open again for in-person hearings.
Thank you, Ms. Morgando. And then, so are you, I mean, is there, sorry, Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Morgando, is there a lot of people who are choosing to wait until they can have their hearings in person? And if there is that a concern for you guys?
Yes, and I wouldn't say it's a high percentage, but there are either injured workers or employers with cases such as claim denials or termination of benefits for misconduct, things like that, where they feel it's important for the judge to see them in person and not just virtually.
Thank you, Ms. Morgando, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have another question from Senator Brooks, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Morgando.
Thank you.
Will you explain to me how the time frame in which the cases are heard and closed will be improved if you expand the courtrooms?
Michelle Morgando, thank you for the question. Yes, if we have 3 more available courtrooms, we have at least 5 days a week, 7 or 8 hours a day, where the special appeals officers, myself, and the 2 other appeals officers who don't have courtrooms, they will now have their own courtroom, and they won't be taking up time in the existing 6 courtrooms. So we'll be able to set cases much faster. And the faster that we're able to get a case on, the faster we can get it to resolution.
And do you have any idea, can you quantify that? Like, it'll cut it in half, or you'll be able to do twice as many, or something like that?
I'm sorry, but I tried to figure out if I could put it into some type of percentage reduction, but the cases are very unique. Some of them take 15 minutes to hear, some take 2 weeks to hear. And so if each one was an hour, I probably would be able to provide a percentage. I can attempt to do that. I would be happy to, but because the cases are of such varying lengths of time and sometimes take multiple days, there isn't a consistent number to work with.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I have another question from Senator Gokachia, please.
Madam Chair, and ma'am, I was just wondering, it looks like in the budget, the governor is proposing a revenue increase or a fee increase, and yet you haven't really determined the hourly rate for the use of these facilities. When will you have that available?
Michelle Morgando, thank you for the question. We are hoping to finalize our lease negotiations very shortly. And once we have a final price per square foot, right now, I believe for for FY22, it is at $2.07. But we're still finalizing our negotiations.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really interested in what those fees are going to look like, and additionally what the impact to your interlocal agreement organizations will be. So that as that gets fleshed out, we would love to see those numbers. I have another question from Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you, Chair Peters. And my apologies if I missed this as I was frantically writing down some notes. But going back to the renovations to increase your courtroom space, do you have a timeline on how long you anticipate that would take?
Michelle Morgando, thank you for the question. We are hoping that once budget closes, we're able to sign the lease, and the lease is approved by the Board of Examiners. Our target date is September 1 of 2021 to start the renovations. And we anticipate it will take approximately 5 to 6 months.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for the question and responses. I don't see any other folks waving down for questions. So thank you so much for the presentation on that budget.
Thank you.
If that's it on that one, we can go ahead and move on to budget account 1346. Looks like Ms. Sotak is available for that.
Yes, thank you. Let me just share my screen. Excellent, thank you. Jovan Sotak, Interim Administrator of the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records Division, Chair Peters, and committee members, it's a pleasure to join you this morning to present the budget account 1346 for the Mail Services Program. With me today are Laura Freed, Director of the Department of Administration, and Matthew Tuma, Administrator of the Administrative Services Division, to help address any questions the committee may have. In alignment with the department's mission, the division's mission is to provide comprehensive government information services to state and local governments and Nevada citizens through the efficient library, archives, and record management and mail services programs. Mail Services provides essential state mail services to participating state and local government agencies in the Carson City, Reno, and Las Vegas areas. Services include pickup, processing, and delivery of outgoing mail and overnight interoffice mail, which includes overnight interoffice mail services between—
Ms. Sotak, I'm sorry, we can see all of your notes as well. So is there a way to just share the slides with us?
I am so sorry. I didn't realize that we had that swap. Thank you for letting me know. All right. Again, Jovan Sotak, for the record. Let's see. All right. So, sorry. Okay. So the United States Postal Service actually processes and delivers all inbound mail to the individual agencies on a daily basis. And other services provided in the Carson City and Reno areas include folding, inserting, addressing, and bulk mailing. So some history. Prior to 2011, the Mail Services Program was part of Buildings and Grounds. As part of the reorganizational efforts at that time, Buildings and Grounds was moved into the State Public Works Division, and Mail Services was moved into the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records. This program's $14.3 million budget represents 51% of the division's budget and 38% of its staff. So consistent with the overall departmental approach, our budget request for mail services is conservative. It represents a 2.2% decrease between fiscal years 21 and the governor's recommended budget for fiscal year 22. The base budget continues funding to operate this program and to support 20 staff. So with a total biennial budget of $14.3 million, the revenues for this division are from postage, interoffice mail stop fees, mail finishing services, and administrative charges. The postage represents 63% of all expenditures, and this is a cost paid for by customer agencies and then passed through mail services. Personnel and, of course, mandatory reserves are the other top expenses. So Mail Services is one of 7 teams overseen by the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records Administrator, and the only team within the division that has a team lead with a grade less than 37. Other library archives and records teams actually have the support of an assistant administrator, which is a grade 41. The Mail Services team operates 2 mail facilities, of course, one in Carson City and another in Las Vegas. And this team works incredibly hard to ensure that the mail never stops. The most senior staff are a program officer.
OTAC, I apologize for interrupting again, but apparently the presentation is not transferring to the live stream to the public. And I think that the fix for this is to stop sharing the screen and start it again and see if we can pick it back up on the live stream.
Super.
Again, I apologize.
No problem.
Difficult.
Sure, this is Stephanie from Broadcast. If you can count to 3 before you start it again, usually that'll help reset it on our end.
Oh. And are we sharing again and good?
We can see it on our side. Broadcast, is that showing on the live screen as well, or live stream as well?
Yes, we can see it on our end. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sorry again.
Thank you. So Jovan Sotak, Interim Administrator, Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records. As I was saying, the most senior staff in the mail services team include a program officer who is grade 33, as well as a program officer 1 who's a grade 31. Other staff include 2 supervisors and technicians, one each in the north and the south, and then 10 mail clerks in the north and 4 mail clerks in the south. Mail finishing services have increased significantly year over year. Now, this team is on track to finish 8 million pieces of mail this year for finishing versus 5.6 million in fiscal year 2019. Now, this matters because these mail finishing services take more staff time and they result in greater wear and tear on the machines. Current staff have more mail than can be processed effectively while maintaining proper business operations and personnel protocols. Now, prior to COVID-19, staffing levels were insufficient to maintain the current program. Staff breaks, annual leave, and training are frequently delayed due to insufficient staffing levels. And this was, of course, compounded because a mail volume has become extremely volatile since the beginning of the COVID-19 emergency, with some agencies, including the Department of Employment, Training and Rehabilitation and Welfare, requiring unprecedented support, while some other agencies have curtailed mail production due to telecommuting and other short-term operational changes. So in all, mail services staff have logged more than 500 hours of overtime since the beginning of COVID-19, and that's even with the support of 3 temporary workers. Personnel have been, like I said, working so hard and been bearing the brunt of aging and poorly functioning mail processing equipment, relying on inefficient methods of hand folding and inserting mail into envelopes just to ensure that the mail goes out on time. So Enhancement Unit 225, it does have an accompanying BDR that establishes the Mail Services Division as establishes Mail Services as a standalone division. The business does have operational oversight and resource management needs that requires on-site leadership with a specific understanding of the mail industry. This person needs to be empowered to analyze and develop the current program and drive broad programmatic change. The COVID-19 crisis highlighted this opportunity as this team struggled to maintain services by supporting more than 400 agencies and 280 mail stops. I did want to mention that the number of mail stops is subject to change, and during the session, you'll see Decision Unit E228. It's associated with budget account 1130, which eliminates the mail stop services for the state controller based on the governor's recommendation to eliminate the controller's office at the Grant Sawyer building. So per NRS, the qualifications for the administrator of the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records includes a Master of Library Science degree or an archival certificate and 5 years of experience in library or archives administration. And historically, these qualifications have not benefited the planning and operation of the Mail Services Program. The program officer classification is limited to administering a program, and there are many business needs, including analysis of management and administrative areas that are outside of this class specification. In addition to the analytical work that the business needs, a dedicated administrator would be able to develop program policies and procedures and lead long-term business and operational planning efforts that would improve service levels for customers. So the numbers on the slide for costs, they were agency requests. So I apologize. They should have been updated to reflect the governor's recommended budget. $90,876 for year one and $120,212 for year two, for a total of $211,088, which of course is slightly lower than listed here. And those include, personnel costs and a small amount of associated operating expenses. So in closing, senior leadership is critical to strategically plan for the rapidly changing needs of an agency that processes approximately 24 million pieces of mail each biennium, and they truly are essential for the continuity of government. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. Would love to take any of your questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Sotak, and we apologize. I think that was mostly on our end, which just has happened as we move through this digital age. I do have a couple of questions I'm going to go ahead with Senator Dennis, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to dig down a little bit more. So on the request to become a division, and you had a slide in there that talked about some of this, but maybe some more specifics on operational changes in daily mail service that is prompting all of this.
Certainly. So Jovan Sotak, for the record, through Chair Peters. I'm sorry, could you clarify the question? Is it what operational changes are needed?
Yeah, what operating changes are needed in daily mail service that what has changed that's prompting this change to become a division?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Jovan Sotak, Interim Administrator, Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records. So a few things. So first, what happened during the COVID-19 crisis really highlighted the need for some operational improvements. One is because of the mail volatility, right? Some clients are producing, are sending through a lot more mail. I'm happy to provide some of those numbers for you. But what has happened is the way the program was originally designed and has been run hasn't allowed for these fluctuation in services. One of the things that I mentioned in the presentation has to do with the mail finishing services, which it isn't just postage. It can be folding and inserting, actually getting mail into envelopes, and those kinds of services. And that actually represents a much larger and growing portion of what our staff does. And that requires actually a lot more staff time to do that. And so the model and the needs have kind of changed, but there hasn't been any business analysis around that. And that also, what comes into play is the equipment that's being used. Some of this equipment is quite a bit older. It needs to be, of course, properly maintained. And we've had several equipment failures that have really derailed the operation. And those machines are receiving a lot of wear and tear because of this switch from the percentage of mail that's receiving just postage versus finishing services. Okay.
And then also I want to talk about, you mentioned that the current division chair has to have a master's of library science, and you're making you're talking about this new person needing some different skills. Can you talk about some of those skills and abilities that you need that are different than we currently have?
Absolutely. Thank you. Jovan Sotak, Interim Administrator, Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records, for the record, through Chair Peters. So absolutely. And to qualify, I'm Interim Administrator. I too do not have a Master of Library Science degree. And so I think I can offer a unique perspective as somebody who stepped into this role for the last 2 months. I will say that I could spend all of my time at mail services right now as an administrator. And I think what skills are really needed are some, a high degree of analytical skills, somebody who knows the mail services business, who can speak to, proper equipment. I see it really as almost more like a warehouse operation. There are, of course, different safety concerns. Really somebody, I think, with deep operational knowledge of business processes and things that in terms of that can analyze the mail business to really kind of figure out what it needs. It's a much different operation. You've got staff who are working again multiple locations, who have very specific training needs, and there's of course a different set of regulations and everything that goes along with that. So I do see it as a rather specialized business, and as I mentioned, the current most senior person on that team has been a program officer too, and so really the analytical and management pieces that business really needs aren't currently being served by that position.
So do you find that the changes in the operations, especially with the pandemic and everything, has because you mentioned you could spend all your time just doing on the mail side, does that mean that things are not getting done on the library side or on the mail side, and so we need to, that's one of the reasons for doing this?
Jovan Sotak, interim administrator, Nevada Library Archives and Public Records, through Chair Peters to Senator Dennis. So it does mean that I am spread thin. That is what it means, and I can say that, of course, because I'm temporarily in this position. What I will say is for Nevada State Library Archives and records teams, right? That represents 6 different teams across kind of those 2 sides of the businesses. And right now we do have a staffing shortage. Usually we would have 2 assistant administrators within that organization to help the rest of the leaders. And I think things are still getting done at the library and archives and public records. We do have quite a bit of vacancies, but what it also means, of course, is that the more specialized attention that mail services needs may not be able, to provide. So I can help with personnel and fiscal and all those things that an administrator helps with, but I lack specialized mail services and operational knowledge. I think there are a lot of improvements when it comes to just daily operations and long-term planning, where we could make some improvements. It's no secret that mail has changed significantly, over the last few years. We've seen, of course, United States Postal Service kind of struggle with those same changes, and we do need to take kind of a look at the business to figure out how we can better serve customers and how that kind of plays into long-term planning for facilities, as well as, equipment and other operational improvements.
Thank you. Sounds like by having that specialized person there, that there's going to be somebody that knows the business will probably be able to save money and avoid costly mistakes, perhaps, as we move forward. So, okay.
Yes, Senator Dennis, Matthew Tuma for the record, administrator for ASD. Just to add on to that and to add on to your comments, our current structure of having mail services under the library system is a unique one for the country. Nevada is currently the only state that puts mail services under the library system, and that leads to us asking for this, pulling it out and being a standalone division within the department.
Yeah, I was aware of that, so I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions and responses and clarification on these issues. Is there anyone else on the committee who has questions related to this budget item and associated requests? I don't see any, so
Madam Chair, can I ask one real quick follow-up?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Sorry, because I just thought, as I thought about this, because you mentioned this, the equipment, I'm familiar with printing equipment and those kind of things. You're saying that is there, Is it going to be soon that we have to replace that equipment? Because I think that would be good for us to kind of have a heads up that there might be a big expenditure coming.
Jovan Sotak, Interim Administrator, Nevada State Library, Archives and Public Records. For the record, through Chair Peters to Senator Dennis. Thank you for the question. Not this budgetary session. You will be seeing that soon. We think that the correct first step for fiscal responsibility is to get somebody with the knowledge of the business and the equipment in place to actually do the analysis for what is needed. And that's in part because different mail equipment is rated for different volumes, and we would want to make sure that we get the right equipment for the volume of mail that we're doing, not just now, but in the long term. So we understand kind of where the business is going, and we make a purchase that is fiscally prudent for that situation.
Thank you. It sounds like a not too distant future here. You're going to be probably needing to do something there. So, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, that is an important piece to keep in mind over the next biennium. Anything else, folks? All right. I think that we are ready. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate you being here. I think we're ready to move on to our last budget, which is 1358 purchasing. And Mr. Doty looks like he's available.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Peters, members of the committees. I am Kevin Doty, Administrator for State Purchasing. We buy goods and services on behalf of the state. I don't have a PowerPoint this morning. We have a pretty straightforward budget with continued funding for 25 employees, 2 enhancements. One is a typical 710 enhancement for replacement of computers in accordance with EAT's replacement schedule. The second enhancement, 225, is dependent upon the legislature passing what is currently known as BDR 1075, which is a modernization of our state procurement code. That would be savings resulting from no longer advertising in newspapers. That is one of BDR 1075 is one of 2 pieces of legislation recommended by executive branch internal audit that state purchasing pursued this session. The other is AB 28, which would restore the inverse preference that used to be in Nevada's law, with the goal of advancing Governor Sisolak's hope that we award more contracts to Nevada-based vendors. Other than that, we have a capital improvement project that you may see for state purchasing. In addition to buying goods and services for the state, we have a statutory obligation to take in surplus property from agencies and try to repurpose it, move it around to other agencies so that we don't have to get rid of things or buy new things. And our Las Vegas warehouse is in pretty bad shape and needs some work, including a new roof and some other work. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Committee, do we have any questions for this budget? I have a question. I have a question related to that bill draft request 1075 that you mentioned, and wanted to know what the impact would be if that's not implemented. In addition to what other outlets do you currently use to publish the purchasing options? And is there a fee associated with accessing those or not?
Thank you for the question, Chair Peters. Kevin Doty for the record. All of our solicitations go out through our e-procurement system, Nevada ePro. And at this moment, I should thank the Nevada Legislature because in 2017, the legislature approved an administrative fee that we attach to certain contracts. And that has allowed us to pay for an e-procurement system, which has enabled us to continue doing our business even during the pandemic, since we're not doing things in paper and having to have people come in person. So it's been a tremendous asset for us. So thank you to the legislature for that. All of our solicitations go out on that system to all of our registered vendors. They receive an email whenever anything that they've signed up for interest in, goods or services, happens to be something we're in the market for. We currently have 2,700 Nevada-based vendors registered in our system. The newspaper advertising requirement goes back to an older time when we didn't have as many ways to reach vendors. It so happens that back in the 90s, I served as general counsel for the Nevada Press Association. So I know what legals, as these are known in the newspaper business, mean to small newspapers. And state purchasing doesn't advertise in small newspapers. Statutorily, we're actually required to advertise in the newspaper that gives us the biggest circulation for the amount of money we spend on the listing, which means all of our advertising is done with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. That kind of makes sense with the kinds of things we're buying. If NDOT has a road project near Eureka, maybe they want to put an ad in the Eureka Sentinel. If Public Works has a building they're rehabbing in Elko, it makes sense for them to put an ad in the Elko Daily Free Press. But state purchasing buys servers and computers and specialized IT software for education and healthcare applications. And it's not the kind of thing that, even if people were looking at these little ads placed in the back of newspapers, that the vendors we're targeting would see them there. So that's why this recommendation is in BDR 1075.
Great, thank you. Understood. Related to your e-purchasing system, is there a charge for service providers to sign up for those emails, or is that also covered under your administrative fees?
Thank you for the question, Chair Peters. Kevin Doty for the record. I totally forgot that when you asked it the first time. No, there is no charge. We want as many vendors to sign up as possible. We have a vendor outreach person who tries to find vendors in Nevada specifically, and we want as many people signed up in our system as possible. And if anyone knows any Nevada vendors who are interested in doing business with the state of Nevada, please go to nevadaepro.com and sign up there so that you can receive emails from us whenever we're looking for a good or service that you can provide.
Wonderful. Thank you for that background information. I think it's important to understand where we stand with our local providers of services. And I look forward to seeing how AB 28 fleshes out. I think that priority for Nevada services and goods is really important for us to consider, particularly as we recover from the pandemic and recession. So does anybody else on the committee have questions about the purchasing budget or purchasing division? All right, I think that's all for questions today. But I think that's it for budgets from your office also today. So thank you all for being here and presenting these budgets and answering our questions. And we will go ahead and move on to public comment, please. Broadcast, I want to go ahead and open up the public comment line. Remind folks who may be calling in that we are asking to limit those verbal comments to 2 minutes, but you may submit written comments to the committee for review. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line for public comment?
Hello, Chair. This is Michael from Broadcast. We currently have one caller. Let me try and queue them up.
Perfect, thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 889. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Jason Mills, Mills. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. This is Jason Mills. I am a workers' compensation attorney in the state of Nevada, and I'm here in my individual capacity as a partner of my law firm. I'm here to speak regarding budget number 1015, executive budget page admin 82, the expansion of the workers' compensation courtrooms. I think it's a good and valuable expenditure of state resources. As you may be aware, according to the presentation earlier, the courts have 6 appeals offices, courtrooms, yet they have 9 appeals officers. The expansion of 3 additional courtrooms will certainly allow more time for claimants such as my clients to have hearings heard in a more expeditious manner. We believe that the expansion of the courtrooms and the facilities for the workers' compensation hearings will result in claimants being able to have their cases heard in a faster manner. We believe that because there's 50% more courtrooms, if this is approved, it would be axiomatic that the hearing officers that will no longer have to, appeals officers that will no longer have to share those courtrooms will now be able to hear more cases in any given week because they won't have to share the courtrooms that they currently have to do right now. And with the lack of having to share those courtrooms and utilize their own courtrooms will mean more cases can get heard in a faster and more expeditious manner. And the injured workers in the state of Nevada will be able to have their cases heard more rapidly. For that reason, as a member of the public and a workers' compensation attorney that regularly on a daily basis appears before the hearing and appeals offices, I believe that this expenditure in the infrastructure being sought is a wise and valuable investment of the state resources. And I think it's a valuable thing that the subcommittee should consider. I thank you for your time today and allowing me to give public comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Is there anyone else in the queue for public comment?
Chair, at this time, the public comment line is open and working. However, we have no more callers at this time.
All right, great. Well, with that, are there any comments from the committee before we wrap up and adjourn the meeting? Doesn't look like it. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting and look forward to seeing you all, I believe, tomorrow.